Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today our focus is on the company PayPal, ticker PYPL. For those that own PayPal like me, though it's been a while, but we are finally seeing some positive stock price movement. In this video, we'll take a quick minute and look at their financials, perform a stock valuation, then look at my PayPal purchases, and at the end of the video, we'll look at my portfolio performance. So let's jump right into it. Starting off at the top with revenue, which had consistent growth over the decade with no down years and up 270% overall. Next, net income and earnings per share had a nice recovery in 2023, with each data point reaching an all-time high for that most recent year, and with net income up more than 900% since 2014, while earnings per share has increased more than 1,000%. Now, the company pays no dividends, so we'll move on to shares, which I like seeing on the decline. And for PayPal, they have been repurchasing their shares and looks to be about 10% over the past 10 years. And they also are planning to continue their share buyback, so I really like knowing that. Then free cash flow, a few down years in red to include 2023, and the highest year was back in 2020, so something we should consider when we do the valuation. But still, it is up nearly 150% over the decade. And then lastly, net profit margin, which I like seeing over 10%. And for the most part, PayPal is over that 10%. Yeah, they had 2 years that were under back in 2022, where it was slightly below 9%, and 2014, where it was just above 5%. But overall, it looks like it's usually towards that mid-teen range. So another good sign there. Now, let's jump down and we'll perform the stock valuation next. Here's the valuation setup, and we'll look at making a modification in a moment. And if you get any useful information, I ask you to consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now, for the intrinsic value, I have $79.74, and with a 90% margin of safety, brings it down to $71.77. And this is based on a 10% short-term growth rate over the next 10 years with a 10% discount rate, and I am using a 3% long-term growth rate. Now, up here in the top right, we can see the net income CAGR over the last 10 years was just over 29%, while earnings per share CAGR'd at just below 31%. So some pretty high growth rates there. But I am using that 10% short term growth rate to be conservative. And I don't think PayPal is going to be growing at those growth rates going into the next 10 years. Those are all quite high, as I mentioned. And also, when we looked at their free cash flow, that really grew at a 10% CAGR over the last 10 years. So that's why I'm using 10%, more conservative. And the current stock price is trading in that mid to high $60 range, maybe about $66, $67. So my current valuation, it's below that. So I do feel it is a buying opportunity. But I know some people are a little more bearish, while maybe a few other people are a little more bullish on PayPal. So let's just make some changes just to see what the valuations are. So let's just say you're a little more bearish, and we'll drop that growth rate to 8% just to see what it comes out to. So with an 8% short-term growth rate, intrinsic value drops to $68, so slightly above where it's currently trading. So I still think there's some opportunity there. Yes, you don't get much of a margin of safety, but it's still a fair value to buy into PayPal if you use an 8% short-term growth rate. Now let's jump that up to 12% if you're a little more bullish. And with a 12% short-term growth rate, intrinsic value jumps up to $93.56, which is about 40% higher from where it's currently trading. And if the market does value it at this price, that'll be some nice growth if this can happen sometime this year. But let's move on and look at some other data points. And the first one is the PE ratio. See, just under 18, 17.8. So it is in that value opportunity range, maybe a little bit more on the higher side, but definitely in a value opportunity. Then long-term debt to free cash flow, I like seeing companies under 3. PayPal is clearly under that, 2.27. So good sign there. As we mentioned earlier, they pay no dividend, and so there's no dividend yield. Share count. So share count dropped 9.6% over the last 10 years, and they are planning to buy back more shares going into the future. So again, a good sign there. And then net profit margin, I like seeing over 10% over the last 10 years, 13.14%, and the last 3 years, slightly higher, 13.16. So again, a great sign there. And one other thing I really like looking at is return on invested capital right here. Again, I like seeing over 10%. And we can see for all these time periods listed, they're over that 10%, really in that 11 to 13, almost 14%. So again, some great signs with some of these data points I really like looking at. But let's move on now, and we'll look at my stock purchases into PayPal. Here are all my buy-ins into PayPal. Pretty much all of them happened in January of 24, except for one that I did make a buy-in in February. And column E just shows the gains since buying in at those prices on each of those days. And column F just shows the gains I would have had if I put my money into the S&P 500 ETF. But overall, I am up just below 12% in my PayPal position, 11.9%. But I will highlight that most of these gains have happened over the past couple weeks in March when the stock price has jumped up. And if I were to put my money into those into the S&P 500 ETF, I'd be up just below 10%. So far, PayPal is paying off, and I am optimistic for the rest of the year. And I do have a cost basis of $59.87. And I'll also note right now I'm not looking to buy into any more shares as I'm kind of comfortable with my current position. And we can see below my total investment is about $9,000 so far, and with the gains, the current value is almost 10,400 or $10,383. So let's move on now, and we'll look at my portfolio's performance next. Here's the portfolio's overall performance, and we have PayPal in the lower right. So it is a smaller investment compared to some of my other positions. And we'll look at a few of the non-tech ones here. Up in the top right, Snap-on, SNA, they're a machinery company. They make high-end tools. So I value them about $299, and they are trading slightly below that, around $297. Then Advanced Auto Parts, AAP. So I have them valued at $104, and they're trading at $85 currently. And then if you watch any of my other videos, you probably heard that I am bullish on home builders. So we'll look at two of those. Toll Brothers, TOL. I have them valued at $145, and they're currently trading at $129. And then Pulte Group, PHM. So I value them at $117, and they are trading slightly above that at $120. But I hope you enjoyed this video, got some useful information. If so, consider subscribing, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.